welcome everybody for joining us here. Let me just get myself set up. Obviously, appreciate all the concerns with childcare, and we are wanted to do this special session to discuss this issue, and so we'll get back to that. But I do have questions that have been provided both through the PAO and through some others on this topic. And in particular, I completely understand and appreciate the concerns coming out of what happened at the end of last week. Just from our side, we had personnel showing up to pick up their parents who informed us that they were going to be put back to work on more full-time schedules or different schedules that suddenly added a lot of demand onto our child care facilities. We're already, as everybody knows, we're at very low numbers for our current capacity. We are working the blue gold shifts as one of the measures that's been placed on us with policy to make sure that we can appropriately respond in case there is a positive COVID, as we saw at Naval Station Everett and some other centers around the U.S. And so that allows us to minimize the impact on presumably mission critical families as we go through this. Now, with that, we took a look at the problem and decided we needed to work with tenant commands to try to make sure that we had the right kids in the spots that we have. Unfortunately, that resulted in some last minute changes. There were disruptions to folks who have expressed their thoughts here, who certainly Gina and others worked with through the weekend. But I know that it's not, that didn't get to the resolution that you guys wanted. And certainly you didn't have the heads up that you were looking for. And I completely understand that. Just, from the greater context of childcare, I did send out all hands at the end of last week to all the folks on the installation. Part of what I discussed, you can look at the Kitsap Sun article from last week on the problems with childcare around the state, really around the nation. We all know it's a problem around society as it is without a pandemic. We don't have capacity in our society for childcare. We don't have capacity in our local community, and we don't have the capacity we need here at the base. We are working on longer-term ways of adding capacity, but nothing that's going to help us out right now. So in this pandemic, in the state, they've lost over 59,000 or 1,279 programs, licensed programs have shut down either permanently or temporarily, losing 59,000 spots for care for children across the state. That's a 30% reduction just due to the pandemic here. We faced a more drastic reduction in our centers, and that's honestly partly because we're doing the blue gold rotation. That will end. We've got plans for that to end, and I'll talk about that here shortly. That obviously doesn't help a lot of the people who are on here who have immediate concerns, and I understand that. And I'll get through your questions here momentarily. So as far as the situation here locally, what is the plan moving forward? Okay, we'll talk about what happened the last few days, and I will talk about some things that we could have done better, and certainly listen to your concerns and comments. So right now we're in our Child Development Center in Regatta. We've got 144 spots that we've been working with, and that's on the 2-week rotation of blue and gold staffing. And so Gina's been able to work with the FIO, our public health officer. I forget what the apologize to the FIO, but anyway, she's the one who's really our go-to person on measures we can take as we get through each phase of this pandemic to try to do as much as we can appropriately to deliver services. And so they did meet today, and so in the bigger context, first of all, the bigger context from the town hall that I had a couple weeks ago, last week. Anyway, the most recent one. We are set to request to go to stage 2 of our reset. Okay, so we're in the process of submitting that request, and I am planning to get a response on that next week. Okay, so that's a little ahead of time from what I had said before. So we're moving a little faster than what we had originally laid out. Not fast enough for everybody, I get that, but we are moving a little bit faster than what I had originally anticipated we'd be able to do. And so we'll be able to start opening up other services. And so I'm planning on having a town hall next week to talk more in detail about the other services and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to start communicating little bits and pieces about that from now until we do that town hall, so people can get that information about what those services are going to look like. So that folds into the child care discussion, that we do see the right trends to be able to request the approval to proceed to that stage 2 of the reset. Additionally, in-house, back to Gina meeting with DeFeo here, we are going to work through, because of the situation as we see it, we're going to work through opening up some additional capacity, and we anticipate we'll be able to do that around June 29th. Again, that's not tomorrow, so that doesn't take care of folks who were either displaced late last week over the weekend, or other people who are eager to get their kids into childcare. And so, unfortunately, I do know from some of the stories I read that people were able to get nannies, sitters, all that kind of stuff. There's also concerns that people are just looking for anybody to take care of their kids, and obviously that's a bad situation when you don't get unlicensed, untrained providers. And certainly there's not a lot of opportunity out in the community to get child care. We are going through a child care improvement project that we actually started before the COVID pandemic. We're doing that for both Whidbey Island and Naval Station Everett. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, because there's an opportunity for folks to participate in that, and I would certainly appreciate people's thoughts and perspective. But one of the resources that I found on the Child Care Aware, but not I, other people did, and they provided it to me, was the ability to see how many licensed providers and what kind of capacity there are in different areas. And interesting, in Oak Harbor, there's 28 licensed programs providing 808 spots, and that serves a population of over 39,000 people. In Anacortes, there's 15 programs providing 285 spots for a population over 21,000. And in Coopville, there's 3 programs offering 96 spots, and that's for a population of over 7,000 in that area. So again, it goes back to before the pandemic, child care already was a big problem, and it obviously continues to be so. So that's so where are we going to go? We are going to continue working to be able to provide 40 more spots on June 29th. We are not planning on opening up Clover yet. Okay, there are some programmatic things from headquarters we still need to get to be able to then, and it's really not just, we could open up Clover, okay, and because I know I've gotten that question a few times. We could open up Clover and spread things out, but it actually reduces our capacity by doing that, because we don't have the staffing, not only in that child-facing staff, so child care is in contact, but also the other staff that goes behind the scenes with all the cooking, janitorial, all that kind of stuff that has to be done. So we have to have all that staff in both centers to be able to have child care in both centers. So opening up Clover is not the answer right now. It's just continuing to find ways that we can, given the situation, as we monitor the situation, we can find ways to increase our capacity. So that's what we're working on. We'll continue to do that. So one of the aspects to this is what is going to happen if we get a positive in one of the centers. So obviously through contact tracing and through testing, we would want to minimize the impact as much as possible on the rest of the folks. In aggregate, if we need a couple days to get through contact tracing and testing, then we do have the ability to shut down a center, bring up the other center with the off staff, and then provide care. And we would have to identify, of course, which children are eligible for care, and which ones need to ROM or quarantine, whatever the case might be. Now, with the what we're moving towards, okay, and that's just obviously we've all been through this for the last few months, so we continue to evolve our practices based on the situation as we see it. Now, what we're working towards is that we'd be able to, if we got a positive, we would have things constrained so that we would then constrain the amount of people who could potentially be impacted in the center. And so then we would go through possibly shutting down an age group, okay, saying that an age group has to be shut down for a minimum of 2 days to then work through the contact tracing and the testing, work through the sanitization of those spaces where that age group and the staff associated with that age group are assigned. And then after those couple days, if things lead us down to the preferable path where it's constrained to one room, then that room would then have to maintain that 14-day period until we make sure that there are no positives in that one group. So that's what we're doing to continue to evolve how we work through potential positives in the center, open up as much capacity as we can, and not only that, limit the impact of positive cases or potential positives. So that's where we are on those policies. At the outset, I will tell you, reading through all these questions that came in and the stories, because it's each one of these personal stories is hard to read because there's certainly, and we don't make these decisions haphazardly. We are working to, of course, work through the mission readiness of the commands here based on Whidbey Island and communicate amongst the commands. Okay, communication is not always perfect, and we saw that at the end of last week. So we saw a sudden demand because we were getting the communication from the parents. We have had instances of commands reaching out, talking to us ahead of time, working through those cases ahead of time so that we can either accommodate or set expectations. And I definitely appreciate when we have the chance to do that, because then it doesn't lead to these disruptive situations like we have with what happened over the weekend. But on reading through this, it kind of struck me that we're going to do a better job of enforcing a 14-day period, okay? And that's going to be, if we get a change from a command that says that parents show up at the center saying that they're changing their work schedule, then we're gonna really work to hold to the 14-day commitment to the folks who have children in the centers, and say that, okay, I got that, but we're not going to displace anybody for 14 days, so that you can try to find either another solution or you can work out an accommodation with your employer. I find it hard to believe that employers don't understand the context of childcare in this situation right now, but I do understand that some of them might not be as accommodating as they should be. And so in the end, childcare, the lack of childcare is an economic impact. It's a drain on people getting back to work, especially spouses. 94% of the folks who are constrained from entering the labor force are women, and it's really a drain on women out there. And it's a tremendous challenge, and it's expressed in a lot of these things. So, okay, so we did get a question come in. I want to just kind of go through some of these things, and obviously a lot of great information on the input. I appreciate that, not only on inputs on what your story was, but also some comments and recommendations. So I'll try to summarize and address these things. Okay, let's see. Spouse of a service member impacted by policies 2 weeks ago contacted CDC, explained the husband was returning to work full time. This person works out in town and requires child care, and got the form. The command provided the form. They got a letter from their employer, was told that they were good to go, would be allowed to put their children back in care on the 1st of June, and then on the 29th at the end received a call from one of the leadership staff there that they'd be unable to utilize the child care because of the capacity. And this spouse goes on, that the 4-year-old was excited that they were going back to school, and I definitely can relate to that. My kids are eager to get out of the house and get back to being with their friends. And let's see. So a lot of good information on the story. Work life is suffering, mental health is suffering. I completely get that, and I understand. And so the logistics surrounding the current policies, I mean, what really does drive a lot of this stuff is for the, unfortunately, it's for the mission readiness of our kind of top tier commands. When we have a command that is basically a pre-deployment command, then we're really working to try to provide the child care capacity to the people who are mission critical in that command. That doesn't mean just because the command says that they're mission critical, we're not questioning that, okay? Because really, every command leader should understand, because I've communicated to them many times, that anytime you designate somebody who's mission critical, then what you're doing is you're impacting somebody else. It's a zero-sum game, and so somebody's going to lose as we make changes. Like I said before, we are going to work to make sure that when we've made a commitment for childcare to somebody, that we're going to, if we do get a case where somebody is more mission critical, as we analyze that, then we're going to at least work to get you 14 days notice so you can try to make other arrangements or accommodations. Okay, husband is forward deployed on Roosevelt. Well, I got to tell you, obviously this is from BAQ 142, so my heart goes out to you because you guys have dealt with a lot throughout the Roosevelt deployment. And you're an essential healthcare worker. Maintain full-time deployment in CDC child care. You were one of the ones who was notified on Friday that as of the 8th, your son's care was suspended. And so, so I apologize. We should have, I really feel like we should have just held to a 14-day time frame on that while we tried to work through other considerations. So this goes into another issue we had, okay, and this was deployed spouses, because we were taking care of kids of deployed spouses. So when we looked at 144 spots when we were going through this decision, then we continue to go back to our priorities. Number one priority is single sailors who are mission critical, who have kids who need child care. Okay, if I had 144 kids of truly mission critical single sailor parents, then nobody else would be getting child care. Okay, but we don't have 144 single sailor mission critical with kids. So then our next tier is dual military, where both parents are mission critical. Okay, so then if we had 80 kids in the first group and 80 in the second group, then that would be 160. So 16 kids would not be able to get care if all those parents are mission critical. But we don't have that. Okay, so then we go to the next tier and we continue to work our way through. Obviously, one of our priorities, once we get past mission critical active duty, is the spouses who are working in our community in mission essential jobs. And now that we have, we're expecting Island County to go into phase 3 here pretty soon. Okay, we're in phase 2, and we see many more businesses opening up, all those kinds of things. Obviously, that means the workforce is going back to work, which means a lot of our spouses are going back to work, and therefore they need child care. And I appreciate that that's going on. I will tell you that when I talk about mission essential jobs in town, okay, we're talking healthcare, first responder, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and that's hard to hear, that's hard to understand, but certainly, you know, if you have a job out in town that is not a healthcare profession, okay, and really all of our healthcare professions, if it's not one of those, then we just need to work closely to try to figure out if there's some kind of accommodation. One of the accommodations that everybody needs to understand is, because I will tell you one of the behaviors that two behaviors that I certainly don't appreciate. One is disrespect of the staff who is working very hard every day. You're talking about staff who are in the child care profession. Okay, their passion is in child care, and they're getting caught in the middle of all these policy changes and this pandemic stress. So they have their own personal pandemic stresses, their own personal stressors. They've got the passion to be able to provide child care, and they know they're on the front lines of telling people that we can't take care of your children. Okay? So every one of our staff members in our CYP programs goes through that stress of dealing with that. So disrespecting them, making them feel like they're the problem is not the answer at all. Okay? If you have any ire about how the CYP program is being handled, you can come talk to me. You can always reach out to me, questions and all that kind of stuff. I would really ask you they're being put in a bad position. Okay? So please bring your anger and frustration to me. The other thing I will tell you is that we have people who go through that criteria, they're mission critical, and so we say, okay, we're going to give you spots. You're saying you're working 5 days a week, great. And then they show up, you know, we all get to work on Monday, and their kids aren't there, okay? Your spots are being held because you're mission critical and you're supposed to be working Monday through Friday. All right? And we're only charging people for the days that they're there, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're only charging people for the days that they're there. So you say that you need childcare Monday through Friday, and then you don't show up, okay? So what gives? Was there an emergent issue? I get that there's emergent issues. Certainly if your child develops flu-like symptoms or something like that, absolutely keep them home. Call us, because what we do is at 7:30 in the morning, anybody else who is enrolled and needs childcare, you can call at 7:30. I liken it to the same thing about the same-day appointments in medical. Okay, my child develops an issue, wake up in the morning, I need to make an appointment. I get on the phone at 7:30 in the morning, and they have same-day appointments. Same thing. By 7:30 in the morning, in our CDC, we look at who has dropped their kids off, and whatever spots are available, they're going to work to get you same-day care. Okay, we had another case where somebody called, that age group was full, and then so couldn't commit to providing care that day for that person. But then one of the people who had their kids in care, 3 or 4 hours into the day, comes and picks up their child because they got off work or for whatever reason, so they took their child and they went home. Now staff reached out to that person who they previously said there wasn't care available and said, hey, we have a spot the rest of the day. If you would like to bring your child, you can use that spot. So we're going to continue trying to work with people who express that need to have kids in care. I would just ask, give us the schedule that you need to follow, and then follow that schedule. And if you are going to not drop your children off, please contact the child care facility so that we can make sure we're providing as much care as possible every day to people who need it. So that utilization rate should be 100%. Every day we should be providing 144 children with care. And I will tell you, we're never there, because the people who say that they need care, not everybody's dropping their kids off. And I'm talking like up to 25% of them. So it's unfortunate because every one of those situations impacts other people. Okay, how can the CDC give us less than a day to find childcare? I totally agree with you. Again, I really do apologize. We should have held to a 14-day time frame on on telling people when their care was going to change. So we will certainly take that into account next time, and work with commands when they make their changes. Abrupt change in priority for child care. So here's one, and maybe I got a little critique from somebody who's very close to me on the wording of the email I sent out. And Gina's stacking up notes for me to answer some questions, so thank you. So it's not that we changed the prioritization. We didn't further reduce the number of spots. We've been at 144 spots in CDC for, I think, the whole time, pretty much. So, and then school age care is a different story, obviously. So I'm obviously focused on the CDC part. So I want to be clear, we didn't reduce the number of spots available. What happened is the demand for the spots went up because of all these the command requirements for tenant commands, and so that drove us to a more stringent application of the tiered structure that I went through with single sailors and dual active duty and all that kind of stuff. So the priority didn't change. It was just the demand increased and forced us to go through that thing at the end of last week. My child has been attending CDC prior to COVID and during COVID. I'm an essential employee at the hospital. Spouse is currently deployed. Okay, so I think I didn't get distracted. I distracted myself from the deployed spouse. So I talked about those tiers, and I talked about the healthcare professionals, workers out there. So then you have somebody who's deployed. Okay, so we've been really working to try to work with our deployed spouses. But we kind of got to a point where we felt in that at the end of last week that we really had to take it in the context of, okay, if we had to hit the tiers, single sailors, dual active military, sailors with spouses in healthcare. And so it became, whether you're deployed or not, really doesn't matter. It does matter. It's very hard. Believe me, I've been through it many times. But what I'm telling you is when we're forced to get to those, just trying to get through those upper tiers, then it becomes a challenge to make sure that we're taking the deployment thing into consideration. I certainly look forward to being able to more fully take into consideration the folks who are deployed. And one way we will do that is we'll make sure we give you 14 days notice minimum if we cannot accommodate you. So for all those people who were displaced at the end of last week, please continue to work with us. Tell your employers that we're continuing to work with you, and we're going to try to get you in as soon as possible, which kind of goes to one of the questions that I have here is what will be the priority for the additional 40 seats. So again, the prioritization doesn't change, but what we will do is we will basically work first to accommodate the people who were displaced. That's our first effort, to work through the folks who were displaced, and then we will make sure we continue to work through the tiered structure of our prioritization. Do you think at all in advance how the CYP was going to manage your all call back to work? Yep, certainly, and so certainly we always are working for better communication across the commands, more advanced notice of commands having to bring more people back to work, and the 14-day notification of change in care for individuals. Those are the things that should help us work through these as we continue to work through this situation and any kind of reflash down the road that we might have. Let's see. How did you choose who was going to get care and who wasn't for CYP? I think I've covered that. Just the comments over here. A lot of great service. The husband is currently deployed, and you're an essential worker working every day during COVID. So yeah, and so I've got a few of them in here saying be a more family-oriented command. Explain how this is families first. Well, I'll tell you, if you're a single sailor active duty and you're mission critical, yeah, your family is the first on my list. The next family is the dual active military with both people mission critical. So I challenge you to understand that we are a family-oriented command. We've got a family framework. We do a lot of things to support the families. Unfortunately, we don't have the capacity all the time to support every family. It's unfortunate, and it's regretful, but we'll continue working things to make sure that we can make improvements in how we deliver the services in that way. When the CYP called to inform families they lost child care, how did you equip them to provide the resources to aid families in the abrupt decision to cancel 30% of the family's child care? I don't think that we got rid of 30% of families' child care. That was, maybe you took that from the email I sent. So Washington State is down 30% of all child care from pre-COVID. But we basically lost 40 out of 180-ish or something like that in this last round. And oh, by the way, I'm sorry, misstated. We didn't lose 40. We had to trade kids, basically. So if there are 30 kids who were displaced, there were 30 kids who went into care. And again, not every one of those kids were there Monday morning, unfortunately, for the care that they said they needed. So some comments in here about until further notice. Email notice they sent went to the active member's email on file. By the way, they're deployed and not the preferred contact on record. I'll tell you, one of the things that I've really figured out in this whole process was our programmatic communication tools in the CYP program are not adequate. Okay, those are the ones that have been contracted for us to use, and that's certainly a big lesson learned, that we need a better, more robust, hopefully, I don't have my phone, it's over there, anyway, app-based system to be able to more easily communicate with parents. That's definitely something that our program needs. So back to the question of providing resources to aid families in the abrupt decision, and also resources available for families who now all of a sudden have to pay 37% more for child care out in town. I'll tell you what, if you're only paying 37% more for child care out in town, I applaud you in finding that resource, because a lot of child care out in town is much more expensive than what we have. So there are some programs out there, but unfortunately there's just not really the capacity out in the community that I'm aware of for everybody to go get child care. So you can go to the military child care or child care in your neighborhood. You can go to the child care aware websites. You can go to the Boys and Girls Club if you got school age care. What else?
Montessori.
But I doubt that they're sitting around with no kids. I mean, they're all tapped out too. So these are all great resources, but they're all severely limited in capacity before the pandemic, and they're further limited in capacity now with the precautions that everybody has to take, them due to the state governor and the precautions put in place there, just like we have precautions in our program. So essential workers worked in mental health agency entire time. Curious as to why I was told that only doctors, nurses, and EMTs were the only people that were being provided child care. Mental health is as important as physical health. So I appreciate your comment. I'll inquire as to specifics on that one, and we'll see if we can get back to you. CDC working with schools about what child care needs if when students return to school. Okay, so longer term issue. I actually looked at the school board agenda for the Oak Harbor School District Board meeting last night. I didn't see them that they were going to talk about projections for the new school year. My youngest is going to be going into that school system, so they are opening enrollment now, so I feel like that's a good indicator. I've got a meeting coming up scheduled with one of my periodic meetings with our great superintendent of the schools here, and we're also in touch with the superintendents at Coopville and Anacortes, so that we can understand what they're looking like. Are they going to be at full capacity? And then certainly if they start off the year at full capacity, hopefully there's not any seasonality to this problem. Hopefully we don't see it coming back, but obviously we'd be right back into the same situation. The only good thing about returning to that situation is we've learned a lot of lessons, and we've got established policies. We'll be able to more effectively work through that with the things that we've learned, but I know it's been painful for everybody throughout this whole process. So, so unfortunately, I can't project what's going to happen, but I do know that the school district and us will continue communicating in that front. Neil, I need childcare since I went back to full-time hours. When did I get a notice? On Friday, so this was another one. I got a notice on Friday, leaving you to deal with it over the weekend. And so that's one that we'll work to do better on. Open the daycare, I need to work. We are a family who are trying to thrive, not fall into financial stress. Yeah, I totally get it. If I had the ability to provide 1,000 child care spots today, I would do it. Absolutely. That is important for our mission readiness here on the flight line, and it's important for families' financial stability, and it's important for mental well-being for those folks who do want to join the labor force. So if I had those resources, we wouldn't be sitting here talking today, but I don't. And so, unfortunately, that means we do have to make choices. We can work to make those choices a little better, but ultimately we do have to make choices. And every choice we make accommodates somebody and doesn't accommodate probably at least 10 or 20 people for everyone it does accommodate. So, so that's going to continue being a problem. Communication between CDH director and CDH providers. So CDH side, the child development homes. So just as a status there, we had 15, I think, going into this. We are basically down 4. We have some temporary losses who, once we get out of the pandemic, when it comes to people who are at risk, those homes would be able to open up as soon as that determination is made. But we also have a couple who we lost along the way. So yet another program where we not only reduced our capacity, but because of measures we have to take, reducing capacity inside of the homes that are there. And so the communication between the CDH director and the providers, again, giving people 2 days notice. So basically our Friday decision affected CDHs as well, right?
They got the notice on Friday, the providers did.
The providers got this notice on Friday. So not the provider's fault, not the CDH director's fault. If you want to say it's anybody's fault, you can say it's my fault, because I do believe there's a couple things we could have done better in that communication there. With limited spots available, why is it that a dual military, when they can alternate their schedule, a priority over deployed spouse and working parent? So yes, ideally, that's why I say if they're dual military and both are mission critical. So if both commands say yes, these 2 sailors, 2 different commands, are mission critical, then our next question to them is, okay, are they mission critical, and do each of them need to work 5 days a week, or can we alternate in some way so that we can provide the child care they need, but then provide child care opportunities for others? And so we go through that conversation with every one of these cases, and in the end, if it's determined that both are mission critical and both need to be working 5 days a week, then they are priority 2 for child care. Open up both buildings and reprioritize. No, we're not going to reprioritize. We're going to continue working through our prioritization structure. And no, we're not going to open up both buildings right now because it's going to reduce our capacity. Okay. Let's see. Let me get to Gina's notes over here. Let's see. So just to be clear, I'm sorry. So let me be clear. So we have the single active duty, the dual active duty. First responders, those are installation first responders or first responders.
They could be first responders out in town.
Okay.
Paramedics, police, fire. That's where we had to prioritize. The dentist offices that just reopened, we did not prioritize them as first responders. We had to take it from medical down to first responders.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, let's face it. If there are people who are doing the important shift work of being on the front lines of first responders, then we need to provide that capability. CYP staff, okay, I've had this question in the past. Why should CYP staff get priority? Well, if you've got a CYP staff member who has a child, so that's one child that we're prioritizing, but then that CYP staff member can provide care for 6 kids.
Between 6 and 12.
Yeah, between 6 and 12, depending on what age group. So it's a net gain of between 5 and 11 kids that we can provide care for. So that's why CYP staff is up there as a priority. And then we get into the single active duty, dual active duty with DoD spouse, active duty with a DoD contractor spouse, active duty with another civilian spouse. Okay? So if you are a spouse who has a job in town, who doesn't fit those other criteria, then it is the 7th priority, okay? I get it, that it's frustrating, it's harsh, it angers you, it frustrates you. But again, if I could give you 1,000 child care spots today, we wouldn't be here talking. And it's a tough situation, and I understand that. Right now, mission essential personnel who were not previously enrolled would still have space until we are no longer in the mission essential, mission critical status in CYP. So a lot of different phases we're in. We're in COOP phase 4. We're in stage 1 of our reset, going to stage 2. We're in CYP 2, hoping to go to CYP 1. We're in HPCon Charlie. We're going to go to HPCon Bravo. I have a hard time keeping track of all these different measures, but we're in this CYP 2 status, and so that status programmatically from headquarters is oriented to anybody who's mission essential or mission critical. Okay, that's who's going to get care. I look forward to when we're going to get out of that, and that's CYP 0. Yep. So we still have to get through CYP 1, which that would come with our decision to go to reset stage 2. Not our decision. We're asking for that permission to go to reset stage 2, and so that will come hopefully in middle of June instead of end of June like I'd originally thought it was going to be. And but then we have to meet the criteria to get down to CYP 0, and at that point it'll be that 14-day notification for those who are going to lose care because they were not previously enrolled, and the 14-day notification for those who were enrolled and who don't have care that they'll be able to get their seat back. One note on that, I've seen a couple comments of people who have gone out, found a nanny, or found some other kind of childcare, and they made the comment that they disenrolled their child. Just remember that, I probably don't understand your situation completely, but don't disenroll your child, okay? Because if we get to CYP 0 in September of this year, or, let's be honest, I don't know how long this thing's going to last. If we get to CYP 0 in July of next year, I don't know what it is. But once we get to that point, then you should be getting your seat back. Now, what's the thing that's going to affect that? Okay, we don't have all the child care staff now who we did when we started this thing. We have lost some staff. We've lost staff because they've resigned or maybe moved or whatever it is. We have staff who have health risks, and so they can't come in and help us out even though they want to. And then with the rest of the staff, we're working the blue and gold. So once we can collapse, go back to everybody working every day, then we're still not going to be 100%. We're still going to be a few classrooms short. We are still working through hiring. We did quarterly, we have got a turnover rate already, so we do quarterly career fairs to try to hire. And we're trying to deliver those things virtually. We're trying to do hiring. So certainly if you have people who want to work, there's opportunity to work in our CYP program every day. So please contact CYP if you want to come to work in that way. And oh, by the way, you'd be number 2 on the list of child care priority. Mm-hmm. So there are certainly some benefits that go along with that. And now you would be transferable in the CYP system if you get PCS to another location, so that you've already been through all your background checks, and then you'd be able to move right into a job at another location and have top priority for childcare. Let's see, no way to establish a date for when non-essential personnel can return yet. Yeah, that goes back to my last comment. We'll keep you posted. And we'll continue to work to make sure our communications are as smooth and clear as possible and that kind of stuff. We will be filling any permanently withdrawn children as soon as we resume normal operations. MilitaryChildcare.com list will be followed as to the highest priority when we begin filling vacancies. So that again goes back to we're going to bring everybody back as long as we have the capacity to do so. I do suspect in this time, whenever we do get to CYP 0, I would guess, it's a guess, I would guess that we will have had some people PCS and drop out of care for other reasons. And so I would hope then that we'd be able to accommodate everybody who was previously enrolled, who still wants their seat back. And then we will go through the standard wait list stuff that we work through on that. Okay. Yeah, another one?
I do.
Okay. CYP applied the more stringent enforcement of the tiers to the CDH providers and CDC. The spaces in CDH will be utilized for overflows from the CDC in the priorities. Okay. Do you want to make any other comments on that,
Yeah,
Gina?
so what I've done is I have saved the CDH spaces, so even the folks that work out in town and they're returning to care, they cannot return to a CDH provider yet, because if I can't take all of the kids in the CDC that are in the top 4 priorities, I have those spaces reserved in CDH. I can say, okay, you guys go to this home, you guys go to this home, and I know how many spaces every provider has every day. That's also where we've been sending the Mission Essential that are not regularly enrolled with us. We've been trying to place them in CDH, so we did not displace anybody in the CDC.
I see.
They're my overflow.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay. Let's see. Any other questions, XL, that are on the list? Okay. Let me talk about one thing that I mentioned that we are doing. We're doing a initiative to try to determine all kinds of ways to expand childcare outside of the pandemic. Working with community on the, we've got community stakeholders involved, because basically just like housing, okay, we don't build housing to house everybody. We only, across the enterprise, we have on average 25% of the people in housing around our bases. Here locally, we're upwards of 35 to 40% of our population resides in housing. So we have a lot more housing than a lot of installations. So how does that relate to childcare? We are never, as a Navy, going to build childcare capacity for everybody affiliated with the installation who needs childcare. So really, we are looking for ways to expand childcare capacity within us, but also working closely with our communities to try to see if there's ways that we can incentivize more childcare in the community. As somebody alluded to, they said they're paying 37% more. There's a lot of places that are, if you go to some other companies, it's like $2,200 for childcare compared to $600 or whatever for us. So it's a lot more expensive in a lot of places on the outside. But there's the fee program. Where they get the subsidized fee.
We subsidize all of our childcare.
Yeah.
From CDH clear through SAC.
Yeah, it's the, hold on, I got it right here.
It's right here, sir.
Oh,
It's the NAACRA.
Oh, NACRA?
Yeah.
NACRA, but there's the
Subsidized payments.
fee assistance program, and so part of the problem with that is you can sign up for the fee assistance program if you're on a wait list, or you're outside of, I think it's 15 or 25 miles from the installation. But there's got to be a community-based childcare that is providing accredited childcare, and so that's really where, if there were more community-based childcare resources out there, then yes, there would be more opportunity to take advantage of those if you can't get into one of our great CDCs or CDHs or the school age care. So So we are working on that. So I will be putting out more information. We've gone through the first couple phases of this project. We're going to deliver results at the end of this year with the plan to get some incremental solutions to add some capacity in childcare. Like I said, it might be something on the installation. It might be the providing better access to community-based childcare. But this is a local problem. It's a programmatic problem across the Navy and DoD, and it's certainly a problem in our society. But we need to find some more local solutions to help out with that, and try to get more dollars from above on that kind of stuff. Let's see. Concerned with the new COVID daycare policy, the kids are in a CDH, and we haven't used a daycare due to my work being able to be remotely. Just had surgery on convalescent leave. Husband is only off this week. Got a note from surgeon that I need help with daycare, that when my husband is at work, when the kids should be at daycare, since I'm not allowed to lift or do a lot over the next 30 days. Okay, so I would say I can't address it completely right here, but I need you to contact Gina to see if, certainly for something on a short term, something like that, we can work through, see if there's something that we can work through, obviously. And then your husband's CMC and the base CMC will work together on this as well. So, okay, if there's no other questions, then I'll get to wrapping this up. So I'll look for opportunity to put out more information about the child care initiative that we're doing. We are going to work to be stringent about the 14-day notification in the future. So when commands make a decision to come back to work, we're going to make sure that they're aware that that child care will not be available until we have spots, because we've notified those people who are going to displace. They have 14 days to find child care. As a community, I really need everybody to understand that if you get a spot, you're displacing a lot of people, okay? So that means a little personal responsibility amongst ourselves. If you don't need the child care for whatever reason, on whatever days, that you communicate that with the staff, because then we can open up those spots to other people who really need it. And the more notice that we have for people making those decisions, then the more notice we can provide for people so that they can plan to have child care. If you're somebody who does need child care and you don't have a secured spot, then please contact us every day at 7:30 to see if you can get a spot for that day. And just please make sure your employers can watch this if they want. It'll be on Facebook, so they can understand everything we're going through, and so that we can, as we work to try to support everybody out there. But we can't support everybody out there. We're just going to continue working to try to make this as not stressful as possible, though it will continue to be stressful. So, okay. All right, so that's all the questions. I answered all the ones that are on the sheets here in front of me. And so then the next thing we'll do is we're going to start putting out bits of information on what stage 2 looks like, which actually there is one question I didn't answer because it wasn't a child care question. So I will answer it though. Is the travel ban lifted for NAS Whidbey sailors? No, it's not. Department of Defense put out a press release yesterday that showed 39 states that are in the green, okay? And so now, but it also says that local installations make that assessment, what that means. A few of the states that are noteworthy that are not in the green are California, Virginia, and Florida, our fleet concentration areas. We're the third biggest fleet concentration area up here in Puget Sound, but certainly, all the travel back and forth between San Diego and here certainly is still going to be impacted. But we are not in the green yet. What we have asked for is to be in the green when we go to HPCOM Bravo and reset stage 2, because it's a Fleet Forces decision. And so we're again expecting that decision soon. So leading up to that, we're going to send out bits of information on what the service delivery for each of the services, exchange, commissary, gym, galley, food, cliffside, all that kind of stuff. All that stuff we're going to start putting it out, and and then next week, Tuesday or Wednesday, we'll get back to you on it. Let's just say Tuesday. All right, Tuesday, 1800. We'll do another town hall to talk about the that reset stage 2, those service deliveries. So please, if you have questions, please contact the NAS Whidbey PAO, either through their email or through their messaging through Facebook, or any other resource that you've been providing questions. Use your ombudsman. Okay, if you don't know who your ombudsman is, there's information we've put out in the past on how to find out who your ombudsman is. So please use your ombudsman, get the questions to the ombudsman. I meet with them every month and talk with them. So please use them. They're a great resource, great people out there doing great work, volunteering to help us out. So with all that, we'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you.